Picture this. It's July 1947, and a rancher in New Mexico finds debris scattered across his land, strange materials that don't burn, don't bend, and don't match anything he's ever seen. Within hours, the military arrives. They secure the area, collect every fragment, and issue a press release that shocks the world. Flying disc recovered. Then just as quickly they take it back. Weather balloon, they say. Case closed. Before we begin tonight's journey into the desert silence of Roswell, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy exploring mysteries with us. And I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see listeners joining from every corner of the world. Now, dim the lights and maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture the high desert of New Mexico in the summer of 1947. Miles of scrubland stretch toward distant mesas, broken only by the occasional ranch house or military installation. The air shimmers with heat, and the silence runs so deep you can hear it pressing against your eardrums. This is a land where secrets hide easily, where the horizon swallows sounds, and the vastness makes everything seem both significant and impossibly small. Roswell sits in the heart of this emptiness, a quiet ranching town where everyone knows their neighbors and strangers stand out like storm clouds against a clear sky. The war ended just 2 years ago, and America is still finding its footing in a world that feels both victorious and uncertain. Technology is advancing at a breathtaking speed. Jet engines scream across desert test ranges, rockets probe the edges of space, and somewhere in the classified corners of military bases, scientists work on projects that most citizens can't even imagine. The Roswell Army Airfield houses the 509th Composite Bomb Group, the only nuclear-capable military unit in the world. These aren't ordinary soldiers. They're the men who ended the war in the Pacific, who carry the weight of atomic secrets, who understand that some knowledge changes everything it touches. Their presence transforms this sleepy desert town into something more significant. Though most residents go about their daily lives without thinking much about the implications. But on a July morning that started like any other, everything changed. The desert holds its breath in the pre-dawn darkness. Stars wheel overhead with a clarity that city dwellers never experience, and the Milky Way spreads like spilled flour across the black canvas of night. Then, somewhere high above the sleeping landscape, something goes wrong. The details remain disputed, but witnesses later describe lights in the sky, a flash that briefly illuminates the scrubland, and the sound of something heavy hitting earth. By morning, debris lies scattered across 75 acres of ranch land. Not ordinary debris, not the twisted metal and scattered components you'd expect from a crashed aircraft. This material defies easy categorization. Some pieces look almost like foil, but foil that won't crease or tear. Other fragments resemble lightweight beams, yet they demonstrate impossible strength. And strangest of all, some witnesses later describe symbols etched into the materials, hieroglyphic-like markings that resemble no earthly writing system. The rancher who discovers this mystery has no idea he's about to become part of one of America's most enduring controversies. He's a practical man, accustomed to the odd things that military bases sometimes drop on civilian land. Spent ordnance, practice bombs, weather balloons, and experimental equipment. Living near an airfield means accepting that unusual objects occasionally fall from the sky. But this feels different. This doesn't match anything in his experience. As the sun climbs higher and the desert heat begins to shimmer off the scattered debris, questions multiply. What aircraft could produce materials with such unusual properties? Why do some fragments seem to defy the basic laws of physics as understood in 1947? And most puzzling of all, why does examining this debris leave witnesses with the unsettling feeling that they're looking at something that doesn't belong on Earth? The morning advances with desert slowness, but already the wheels of consequence are turning. Soon, phone calls will be made. Officials will be contacted. Military personnel will secure the area. And within hours, this quiet corner of New Mexico will become the epicenter of a mystery that refuses to die, even 76 years later. What really crashed in the New Mexico desert that July night? The official explanation seems straightforward enough. Weather balloon. Classified military equipment. Case closed. But the questions linger like heat mirages, shimmering just beyond the reach of definitive answers. Some say the debris displayed properties that exceeded any known 1947 technology, materials that couldn't be cut, burned, or permanently deformed. Lightweight components are stronger than steel. Memory metal that returned to its original shape, no matter how it was twisted or crushed. If these accounts are accurate, what could explain such advanced materials in an era when jet engines were still revolutionary? Others point to the rapid military response and the extraordinary secrecy that followed. Why would routine weather balloon recovery require such intensive security measures? Why were witnesses allegedly visited and warned to remain silent? Why did physical evidence disappear into classified channels, never to be seen again by civilian eyes? The desert keeps its secrets well. Miles of emptiness swallow sounds and hide activities. Military installations operate behind guarded perimeters, where classified projects develop technologies that won't see public acknowledgement for decades. In this environment, extraordinary claims become possible, and ordinary explanations carry the weight of official denial. As we begin our journey through the Roswell mystery, we'll examine every angle: the believers who see evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, the skeptics who find reasonable explanations in classified military projects, and the curious middle ground where questions outnumber answers, where witness testimony conflicts with official records, and where the truth might be stranger than either side imagines. The high desert remembers everything and reveals nothing easily. But somewhere in the intersection of military secrecy, witness testimony, and 76 years of investigation lies the answer to one of America's most persistent questions. What really crashed near Roswell in the summer of 1947? The journey to understanding begins with that quiet morning when a rancher found debris scattered across his land. Debris that would launch 1,000 theories and transform a sleepy desert town into the unofficial capital of UFO mystery. The silence of the desert holds many secrets. Tonight, we'll explore the one that refuses to stay buried. The morning of July 2nd, 1947, begins like countless others for Mac Brazel. The sun rises over his sprawling ranch 30 miles northwest of Roswell, painting the desert landscape in shades of gold and amber. At 50 years old, Brazel has spent decades working this harsh but beautiful land, learning to read the subtle signs that tell him when storms are coming, where cattle might find water, and how to coax a living from soil that doesn't give up its secrets easily. He's a practical man, built for the demands of ranch life. Weather-beaten hands that can mend fencing or deliver a calf. Eyes that can spot a coyote at a distance or notice when something doesn't belong in the familiar pattern of his land. This morning, as he rides out to check on his sheep after the previous night's thunderstorms, those observant eyes notice something that stops him cold. Debris, scattered across nearly 75 acres of his pasture, stretching from a shallow draw up onto higher ground. At first glance, it might be aircraft wreckage. The military bases in the area occasionally lose equipment during training exercises, and Brazel has found spent ordnance and practice bombs on his property before. But as he rides closer, dismounting to examine the scattered materials more carefully, he realizes this is unlike anything he's ever encountered. The pieces vary in size and shape, but they share characteristics that challenge everything Brazel knows about materials and manufacturing. Some fragments look almost like aluminum foil, but thicker somehow, with a strange sheen that shifts in the morning light. When he tries to crease one of these pieces, it springs back to its original shape immediately, as if it remembers its intended form and refuses to accept damage. Other debris resembles lightweight beams, perhaps 4 or 5 feet in length, triangular in cross-section but hollow. They feel impossibly light in his weathered hands, yet when he tries to break one across his knee, it won't bend or crack. The surface is smooth, almost glassy, but warm to the touch despite the cool desert morning. Most puzzling of all, some of these beam-like pieces bear markings along their length. Not English letters or numbers, but symbols that look almost like hieroglyphics, flowing and organic yet clearly artificial. Brazel has lived through the rapid technological advances of World War II. He's heard about jet engines and rocket tests, about radar and other military innovations that would have seemed like magic just a few years earlier. But this material exceeds anything in his experience. The foil-like substance won't tear, no matter how hard he pulls. When he holds a lighter flame to one of the pieces, it doesn't burn, doesn't even get warm. The beam fragments demonstrate strength that seems impossible given their lightweight and delicate appearance. As the morning progresses and Brazel examines more of the debris field, questions multiply in his mind. What kind of aircraft could be built from such materials? The pieces don't show the twisted, torn characteristics he'd expect from a high-speed crash. Instead, they seem almost deliberately scattered, as if something exploded or came apart at a high altitude, distributing components across his pasture with an almost mathematical precision. The sheer quantity of debris impresses him. This isn't the wreckage of a small weather balloon or experimental device. The scattered field suggests something substantial, perhaps the size of a small aircraft, though unlike any aircraft he's ever seen or imagined. And the materials themselves continue to perplex him. How can something be simultaneously so lightweight and so incredibly strong? How can a metal spring back to its original shape after being crumpled or twisted? Brazel collects several of the smaller pieces, thinking he should report the find to the authorities. Living near military installations means understanding that some crashed equipment might be classified, and that there could be legitimate national security concerns about leaving such materials scattered across civilian land. The practical rancher in him also wonders about liability. If this debris belongs to the government, he should probably let them know where to find it. But as he gathers samples of the strange materials, Brazel can't shake the feeling that he's handling something extraordinary. The symbols etched into some of the beam fragments particularly intrigue him. They're clearly artificial, obviously created by intelligent design, but they don't resemble any writing system he's familiar with. The flowing organic shapes seem almost alive, as if they were grown rather than manufactured. The desert wind picks up as the day grows warmer, but the debris doesn't move like ordinary wreckage would. The foil-like pieces lie flat against the ground, seemingly heavier than their appearance suggests. The beam fragments remain exactly where he found them, as if they possess some quality that anchors them in place despite their lightweight construction. As Brazel loads his samples into his truck and prepares to drive into Roswell, he has no idea he's about to ignite one of America's most enduring mysteries. The strange materials in his truck bed represent either the most sophisticated technology 1947 has to offer, or something far more extraordinary than classified military equipment. The drive into town gives him time to consider his options. Should he contact the sheriff first, or go directly to the military base? The debris clearly isn't ordinary ranch refuse or natural materials. Whatever created this wreckage possesses manufacturing capabilities that exceed anything Brazel has encountered in his 50 years of practical experience. By the time he reaches the outskirts of Roswell, Mac Brazel has made a decision that will change his life forever. He'll report the find to Sheriff George Wilcox. Let the authorities determine what steps to take next. The rancher who discovered impossible materials scattered across his desert pasture has no way of knowing he's about to become the first witness in a mystery that will outlive him by decades. The strange debris waits in his truck bed, silent and enigmatic, ready to launch 1,000 theories. Sheriff George Wilcox listens with growing interest as Mac Brazel describes the strange debris scattered across his ranch. The rancher's practical demeanor and obvious confusion about the materials convince Wilcox this isn't a routine matter. After examining the samples Brazel brought to town, the sheriff makes a decision that will set extraordinary events in motion. He picks up his phone and calls Roswell Army Airfield. Within an hour, Major Jesse Marcel arrives at the sheriff's office. Marcel serves as the intelligence officer for the 509th Composite Bomb Group, the world's only nuclear-capable military unit. This isn't a man easily impressed or confused by technological mysteries. He's seen classified equipment, experimental aircraft components, and the cutting-edge materials that emerge from America's most secret research programs. But when Marcel examines Brazel's samples, his expression grows increasingly puzzled. The Major handles each piece carefully, testing its properties with the methodical approach of someone trained to assess unknown technologies. The foil-like material springs back to its original shape, no matter how he crumples it. The beam fragments demonstrate impossible lightness, combined with extraordinary strength. Most intriguing are the symbols etched along some pieces, markings that resemble no military coding system or manufacturing stamps Marcel has encountered in his extensive experience with classified equipment. Marcel's training tells him to secure the area immediately. Whatever created this debris, whether experimental American technology, foreign intelligence equipment, or something else entirely, requires careful investigation under military control. He arranges for Brazel to guide him back to the ranch, and by late afternoon, a small convoy of military vehicles makes its way across the desert toward the debris field. The scene that greets Marcel exceeds his expectations. Debris scattered across 75 acres creates a pattern unlike any aircraft crash he's investigated. The materials lie distributed with almost mathematical precision, as if something came apart at high altitude and scattered its components according to aerodynamic principles rather than chaotic impact forces. But the materials themselves continue to defy easy categorization. Marcel orders his personnel to begin systematic collection while he radios base headquarters for additional support. This clearly exceeds the scope of routine crash recovery. The quantity of debris, its unusual properties, and the unfamiliar symbols on various pieces suggest something requiring higher-level analysis. By evening, the debris field buzzes with military activity as personnel work to collect every fragment under portable floodlights. The Major examines larger pieces as they're gathered, and his confusion deepens. Some materials demonstrate properties that exceed his understanding of metallurgy and manufacturing techniques. Metal that won't dent despite hammer blows. Foil that returns to perfect flatness after being wadded into tight balls. Beam structures so lightweight they seem almost hollow, yet strong enough to support a man's full weight without bending. As night falls across the desert, Marcel faces a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Should he follow standard protocol and file a routine crash recovery report? Or does this material warrant extraordinary classification measures? The symbols alone suggest foreign manufacture, possibly Soviet technology that somehow crashed on American soil. But the material properties exceed anything in his knowledge of international technological capabilities. As of 1947, the intelligence officer's training emphasizes the importance of securing potentially significant materials before their nature can be determined. Whether this debris represents advanced American experimental technology, foreign intelligence equipment, or something else entirely. It clearly requires analysis by the nation's most sophisticated research facilities. Marcel orders the entire collection loaded onto military transport vehicles for immediate shipment to Wright Field in Ohio, home to America's premier foreign technology analysis division. By midnight, trucks loaded with the mysterious debris begin their journey eastward. Every fragment, no matter how small, travels under military guard toward Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where scientists and engineers will attempt to determine what kind of technology could produce materials with such extraordinary properties. The desert returns to its accustomed silence, but the questions raised by the debris field will echo for decades. Marcel accompanies the shipment personally, understanding that his career may depend on proper handling of whatever they've recovered. During the long drive through the night, he continues examining pieces of the debris, growing more puzzled with each inspection. The symbols particularly intrigue him. They appear deliberately crafted, clearly artificial, but unlike any writing system or manufacturing codes in his extensive experience with military equipment. The Major's scientific curiosity wars with his intelligence training. Part of him wants to understand how these materials were created. What manufacturing process could produce metal with such unusual properties? What civilization or technology could etch those flowing, organic symbols? But his military discipline reminds him that some questions exceed his authorization level. His job is to secure and transport, not to analyze and theorize. As dawn breaks over the American heartland and the convoy continues toward Wright Field, Marcel reflects on the implications of what they're carrying. If this represents foreign technology, particularly Soviet advances, it could change the balance of power in the emerging Cold War. If it's experimental American equipment, someone will need to explain why classified materials were testing over civilian ranch land without proper coordination. But a third possibility nags at the intelligence officer's trained mind. What if this debris represents something outside the normal parameters of international military technology? What if the materials and symbols suggest manufacturing capabilities that exceed current human understanding? Marcel's scientific education tells him to consider all possibilities, even the ones that challenge fundamental assumptions about what's technologically possible. In 1947, the convoy rolls eastward through the morning light, carrying materials that will soon disappear into the most classified research facilities in America. Behind them, the New Mexico desert keeps its secrets, but ahead lies Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where scientists will attempt to unlock the mystery of debris that defies conventional explanation. Major Jesse Marcel has no way of knowing he's just initiated one of the most controversial investigations in military history. The morning of July 8, 1947, begins quietly at Roswell Army Airfield, but Colonel William Blanchard is about to make a decision that will reverberate through history. As base commander of the world's only nuclear-capable bomb group, Blanchard understands the weight of public communication during an era when atomic secrets and military technology dominate national security concerns. Yet something about the debris recovered from Mac Brazel's ranch compels him to take an extraordinary step. At 11:30 that morning, Blanchard authorizes a press release that will transform a quiet desert incident into front-page news worldwide. The statement is brief but explosive in its implications. The Roswell Army Airfield announces that personnel have recovered a flying disc from a ranch near Roswell. The military, according to the official statement, is examining the object and will forward it to higher headquarters for analysis. The words hit the media like a lightning strike. Flying disc. Not aircraft debris or weather balloon components, but a flying disc. The very terminology that has captured public imagination following Kenneth Arnold's famous sighting of mysterious objects over Mount Rainier just 2 weeks earlier. Arnold's description of craft that moved like saucers, skipping across water, launched the modern flying saucer phenomenon. And now the military itself seems to confirm that such objects not only exist, but occasionally crash on American soil. Radio stations interrupt regular programming to broadcast the stunning announcement. Newspaper editors scramble to rewrite front pages. The Associated Press wire carries the story across the nation and around the world within hours. In an era when communication travels more slowly than today, the Roswell press release achieves something remarkable. Instantaneous global attention, focused on a small desert town in New Mexico. The public reaction exceeds anything Colonel Blanchard anticipated. Reporters begin converging on Roswell from major newspapers and radio networks. Phone calls flood the base switchboard from journalists demanding additional details. The military suddenly finds itself at the center of the biggest story since the end of World War II, and the implications terrify higher command levels. By early afternoon, phones ring frantically between Roswell and higher military headquarters. General Roger Ramey, commanding officer of the 8th Air Force at Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas, receives urgent calls from Washington demanding immediate clarification. What exactly did Roswell recover? How could base personnel mistake routine military equipment for something extraordinary? And most critically, how can the military contain a story that's spreading across the globe at unprecedented speed? Ramey acts swiftly to control the narrative. He orders the debris flown immediately to Fort Worth for his personal examination, and he instructs his staff to prepare a corrective press conference. Within hours, military transport aircraft carry the mysterious materials from Roswell to Texas, where Ramey will attempt to transform flying disc headlines back into routine military business. The general's strategy relies on a simple principle: show the press ordinary debris, while explaining that overzealous personnel made an understandable but embarrassing mistake. Weather balloon equipment, particularly the classified high-altitude surveillance balloons used for atmospheric research, could reasonably be misidentified by personnel unfamiliar with such specialized equipment. The explanation provides face-saving cover for the military, while offering reporters a plausible story to replace their flying disc headlines. But the press conference that follows raises as many questions as it answers. Ramey poses with Major Marcel beside debris that clearly consists of weather balloon components, torn rubber, broken wooden sticks, and metallic foil that looks exactly like standard radar reflector materials. The general explains patiently that military personnel, in their enthusiasm to support the ongoing flying disc investigations triggered by recent sightings, mistook routine weather equipment for something more significant. Yet something in the photographs seems wrong to careful observers. Marcel, the experienced intelligence officer who seemed so puzzled by the original materials, now stands beside obviously conventional debris with an expression that suggests discomfort rather than relief. His body language doesn't match someone who's just realized an embarrassing mistake. Instead, he looks like someone participating in a performance he doesn't entirely believe. Reporters ask pointed questions about the dramatic change in story. How could nuclear-trained military specialists, particularly intelligence officers responsible for identifying foreign technology, mistake weather balloon debris for a flying disc? Why did the initial press release use such specific terminology if the materials were obviously conventional equipment? And why does the debris photographed in Fort Worth look different from witness descriptions of the materials originally collected near Roswell? Ramey handles the questions with practiced military diplomacy, emphasizing the challenges of identifying unfamiliar equipment and the importance of thorough analysis before drawing conclusions. The weather balloon explanation provides sufficient plausibility to satisfy most reporters, and the story begins transitioning from flying disc sensation back to routine military business. But doubts linger among some observers who notice inconsistencies between the official narrative and physical evidence. The press conference achieves its immediate objective of containing the flying disc story, but it also establishes a pattern that will fuel decades of speculation. The dramatic reversal from extraordinary claims to mundane explanations, the destruction of physical evidence before independent analysis, and the apparent discomfort of key witnesses create a template for conspiracy theories that will outlast everyone involved in the original incident. Within 24 hours, the story that briefly captivated the world fades from front pages, replaced by other news in an era of rapidly changing headlines. The military successfully transforms flying disc recovery into weather balloon misidentification, and most of the public accepts the correction without further question. Roswell returns to its accustomed quiet, and the desert keeps its secrets. But questions persist in the minds of those who witnessed the dramatic reversal. What happened to the original debris that so puzzled experienced military personnel? Why did the materials photographed at Fort Worth look so different from initial witness descriptions? And most troubling of all, why does Major Marcel, years later, continue to insist that what he handled in the New Mexico desert exceeded any weather balloon technology he'd ever encountered? The press release that started everything becomes both the beginning and the end of the official Roswell story. The weather balloon explanation settles like desert dust over the Roswell incident, officially closing a case that had briefly captivated the world. But beneath the surface of official resolution, questions simmer among those who witnessed the original materials before they disappeared into classified military channels. The debris that so puzzled experienced personnel doesn't match the torn rubber and wooden sticks displayed at General Ramey's press conference. And the discrepancies fuel quiet speculation that will persist for decades. Project Mogul represents one of America's most classified Cold War programs, designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests by monitoring acoustic signatures in the upper atmosphere. High-altitude balloon arrays carry sensitive microphones and recording equipment to altitudes where nuclear explosions create distinctive sound patterns that travel for thousands of miles. The project's existence remains so secret that even military personnel involved in debris recovery lack clearance to understand what they might encounter if a Mogul balloon crashes on civilian land. The technology behind Project Mogul, could reasonably explain many characteristics of the debris found on Mac Brazel's ranch. The balloons themselves use lightweight yet durable materials designed to withstand extreme atmospheric conditions. Radar reflectors attached to the arrays employ metallic foil that might appear unusual to unfamiliar observers. Support structures utilize advanced composites that demonstrate impressive strength-to-weight ratios for 1947 technology. Even the quantity of debris could match a crashed mogul array, which carries substantially more equipment than routine weather balloons. Colonel Blanchard's decision to announce recovery of a flying disc might reflect his genuine confusion about materials that exceeded his familiarity with classified projects. Intelligence officers like Major Marcel, despite their high security clearances, operate on need-to-know principles that could leave them unaware of specific mogul characteristics. The rapid escalation to higher command levels and immediate shipment to right field follows standard protocol for any potentially significant foreign technology, whether Soviet equipment or misidentified American projects. Yet the mogul explanation, while plausible, doesn't address all witness testimonies about the debris characteristics. Multiple observers describe materials that demonstrated properties exceeding known 1947 manufacturing capabilities. Metal that wouldn't dent under hammer blows. Foil that returned to perfect condition after being crumpled into tight balls. Lightweight beams that supported substantial weight without bending or breaking. These properties suggest technological capabilities that exceed even classified American research programs of the era. Most puzzling are the consistent reports of symbols or hieroglyphic-like markings etched into some debris pieces. Project Mogul components would bear standard military markings, manufacturer stamps, or equipment identification codes, not the flowing, organic symbols described by witnesses. These markings, according to those who claimed to see them, resembled no earthly writing system, appearing almost grown rather than manufactured. Such descriptions challenge the weather balloon explanation and suggest either extraordinary human technology or something beyond conventional understanding. The timeline of events also raises questions about the official narrative. If experienced military personnel simply mistook weather balloon debris for something unusual, why did the correction require intervention from the 8th Air Force commander? Why did General Ramey personally oversee the press conference rather than allowing local officials to clarify their mistake? And why did the military maintain extraordinary secrecy about Project Mogul for nearly 50 years if it represented routine atmospheric research? Witness accounts of the debris' behavior under testing create additional complications for conventional explanations. Mac Brazel reportedly tried to burn sample pieces with no effect. Major Marcel later described materials that couldn't be dented, cut, or permanently deformed despite extensive testing. Military personnel allegedly struck beam fragments with sledgehammers without producing visible damage. These characteristics exceed the properties of any known weather balloon components, classified or otherwise. The photographs from General Ramey's press conference present their own mysteries. The debris displayed clearly consists of conventional weather balloon materials, torn rubber sheeting, wooden support sticks, and standard radar reflector foil. But careful observers note that Major Marcel, who originally handled the ranch debris, appears uncomfortable, posing with the Fort Worth materials. His expression and body language suggest someone participating in a performance rather than someone relieved to understand his earlier confusion. Some researchers later claim the debris photographed at Fort Worth differs substantially from witness descriptions of the original materials. The ranch debris allegedly included intact beam structures, unmarked metallic sheets, and components with unusual surface textures. The Fort Worth debris shows obviously damaged weather balloon equipment, with clear manufacturer markings and conventional construction. This discrepancy could indicate either unreliable witness memory or deliberate substitution of materials for public display. The broader context of 1947 adds complexity to evaluating the official explanation. America was developing revolutionary technologies while desperately attempting to understand Soviet capabilities following World War II. Military research programs explored jet propulsion, rocket technology, radar systems, and other innovations that would seem impossibly advanced to most observers. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base specialized in analyzing captured German technology and assessing foreign military capabilities through reverse engineering. Could the Roswell debris represent misidentified advanced American technology rather than weather balloon equipment? Some researchers suggest the materials might have originated from classified aircraft development programs, experimental missile tests, or other military projects requiring extraordinary secrecy. The immediate shipment to Wright-Patterson, America's Center for Foreign Technology Analysis, could indicate recognition that the debris represented significant technological intelligence, regardless of its origin. The weather balloon explanation provides sufficient plausibility to satisfy official requirements while protecting legitimate national security interests. Whether the debris came from Project Mogul, other classified programs, or something more extraordinary, the military achieved its primary objective of removing materials from public examination and ending media speculation. The explanation worked so effectively that most of the public accepted it without question, allowing the incident to fade from mainstream attention for more than 30 years. But questions persist among those who witnessed the original events, questions that will eventually transform a forgotten news item into America's most famous UFO case. The Roswell incident might have remained a footnote in military history, if not for the witnesses who emerged decades later with accounts that challenged every official explanation. These weren't publicity seekers or UFO enthusiasts looking for fame. Many were respected community members, military veterans, and professionals who risked ridicule by sharing stories that contradicted the accepted narrative. Their testimonies, emerging in the late 1970s and early 1980s, transformed a forgotten news item into America's most famous UFO case. Glenn Dennis worked as a mortician in Roswell during the summer of 1947, operating one of the town's funeral homes while maintaining contracts with local medical facilities. His story, which didn't surface publicly until the late 1980s, adds a chilling dimension to the official weather balloon narrative. According to Dennis, military personnel contacted his funeral home on July 8th, requesting information about small coffins and preservation techniques for bodies that had been exposed to the elements. The phone calls puzzled Dennis because the military typically handled their own mortuary affairs through established channels. Why would they contact a civilian funeral home about preservation methods? The questions seemed oddly specific, focusing on coffins sized for children or small adults, and asking about embalming procedures that could prevent contamination, while maintaining tissue integrity for scientific examination. Dennis later claimed he offered to provide the requested services, but was told the military would handle arrangements internally. More disturbing was Dennis's account of visiting the base hospital later that day to deliver medical supplies. According to his testimony, he encountered unusual activity in the hospital corridors, including military personnel who seemed agitated by his presence and ordered him to leave immediately. But before his departure, Dennis claimed he briefly spoke with a nurse he knew professionally, a woman who appeared deeply shaken by something she'd witnessed in the hospital's examination rooms. The nurse, according to Dennis, described seeing 3 small bodies being examined by military medical personnel. These weren't human remains in any conventional sense. The beings measured approximately 3 to 4 feet in height, with disproportionately large heads and eyes. Their skin appeared grayish and seemed different from human tissue in texture and composition. Most disturbing was their apparent integration with some kind of technology, as if they represented a fusion of biological and mechanical systems that exceeded human understanding. Dennis claimed the nurse provided sketches of the beings she'd observed, drawings that depicted humanoid forms with the classic characteristics that would later become associated with popular depictions of extraterrestrial visitors. Large craniums suggesting advanced brain development, enormous eyes adapted for different lighting conditions than those found on Earth, slight body structure that seemed designed for lower gravity environments. The sketches, according to Dennis, showed creatures that clearly weren't human, but demonstrated obvious intelligence and technological sophistication. The nurse's fate adds another layer of mystery to Dennis's account. According to the mortician, she was transferred from the base within days of the incident and subsequently disappeared from all contact. Attempts to locate her through military records allegedly met with claims that no such person had ever been stationed at Roswell Army Airfield. Her personnel files seem to have vanished, and former colleagues claim no memory of her existence. Either Dennis fabricated the entire relationship, or someone took extraordinary measures to erase all traces of a potential witness. Other military personnel began sharing similar accounts as the decades passed, though most requested anonymity due to ongoing security clearances or concerns about military retaliation. These witnesses described seeing craft debris that exceeded anything in their technological experience, bodies that clearly weren't human, and a level of military secrecy that suggested something far more significant than weather balloon recovery. Sergeant Lewis Rickett, assigned to counterintelligence duties at Roswell, later described being taken to the debris field several days after the initial recovery. According to Rickett, substantial amounts of unusual material remained scattered across the ranch, despite the military's cleanup efforts. He claimed to have personally handled fragments that demonstrated impossible properties, including metal that couldn't be dented with tools and components that seemed to generate their own energy without visible power sources. Staff Sergeant Robert Porter, who served as a flight engineer on the B-29 that allegedly transported debris to Wright Field, provided testimony that challenged the weather balloon explanation. According to Porter, the material loaded onto his aircraft came in sealed containers that required special handling procedures, typically reserved for highly classified or dangerous cargo. The weight distribution and security measures exceeded anything he'd experienced during routine equipment transport, suggesting materials of extraordinary significance. Major Marcel himself, years after his retirement from military service, began sharing accounts that contradicted his official statements from 1947. In interviews conducted during the late 1970s, Marcel described materials that exceeded his understanding of metallurgy and manufacturing techniques. He claimed the debris demonstrated properties that couldn't be reproduced with 1947 technology, including memory metal that returned to its original shape, regardless of deformation, and components that seemed to incorporate energy sources he couldn't identify. The intelligence officer's later testimonies revealed his continuing puzzlement about the incident. Marcel insisted that whatever crashed on the New Mexico ranch wasn't weather balloon equipment, despite his participation in General Ramey's press conference. He described being ordered to pose with substitute debris for photographs, while the original materials disappeared into classified research channels. According to Marcel, the switch was deliberate, designed to provide plausible cover for the recovery of something genuinely extraordinary. These witness accounts, emerging 30 to 40 years after the original incident, transformed public perception of the Roswell case. The testimonies suggested a pattern of official deception that extended far beyond simple misidentification of weather balloon debris. If even partially accurate, these accounts indicated the recovery of technology and possibly biological materials that challenged fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. But the delayed emergence of these testimonies also raised questions about reliability and motivation that continue to complicate evaluation of the Roswell evidence. The most sensational claims surrounding the Roswell incident involve not just the recovery of extraordinary technology, but the discovery of biological entities that challenged every assumption about life in the universe. These accounts, emerging decades after the original events, describe small humanoid beings found either at the main debris field or at a separate crash site closer to Roswell itself. The testimony surrounding these alleged bodies remains the most controversial aspect of the entire case, dividing researchers between those who see evidence of extraterrestrial visitation and skeptics who question both the timing and reliability of such extraordinary claims. According to various witnesses, the beings discovered near Roswell measured approximately 3 to 4 feet in height, with physical characteristics that differed dramatically from human anatomy. Large craniums suggested brain development that exceeded human proportions, while enormous eyes seemed adapted for different lighting conditions than those found on Earth. The skin appeared grayish in color, with a texture that witnesses described as neither fully organic nor entirely artificial, as if these entities represented some fusion of biological and technological systems. Glenn Dennis, The Roswell mortician, whose testimony emerged in the late 1980s, provided the most detailed second-hand account of the alleged bodies. According to Dennis, his nurse contact at the base hospital described seeing 3 entities being examined by military medical personnel. The beings, she reportedly told him, demonstrated clear signs of intelligence despite their non-human appearance. Their cranial structure suggested advanced cognitive capabilities, while their slight body construction seemed designed for environmental conditions different from those on Earth. The nurse's alleged sketches, as described by Dennis, depicted humanoid forms that would later become iconic in popular culture's portrayal of extraterrestrial visitors. The drawings supposedly showed beings with elongated limbs, 4-fingered hands, and facial features dominated by large, dark eyes. Most intriguingly, the sketches allegedly revealed what appeared to be technological integration within the being's anatomy, as if they represented a merger of biological evolution and artificial enhancement that exceeded human understanding. But Dennis's account raises troubling questions about the military's handling of such extraordinary materials. Why would professional medical personnel contact a civilian mortician about preservation techniques for non-human entities? The military maintains extensive medical facilities and pathology expertise that would far exceed anything available through civilian funeral homes. Either Dennis misunderstood the nature of the military's inquiries, or someone made decisions about the handling of alien bodies that defied logical protocol. Other witnesses claimed direct involvement in the recovery and transport of the alleged entities. Several former military personnel, speaking anonymously due to security concerns, described being ordered to establish perimeters around crash sites where bodies were recovered along with technological debris. These witnesses described seeing entities that clearly weren't human, but demonstrated obvious signs of intelligence and technological sophistication. The accounts consistently describe beings that seemed adapted for different environmental conditions than those found on Earth. Their large eyes suggested evolution in lower light conditions, while their slight bone structure implied development in reduced gravity environments. Some witnesses claimed the entities wore form-fitting garments that seemed integrated with their bodies, as if clothing and biology had merged into unified systems designed for specific operational requirements. Most disturbing were accounts of the entity's apparent technological integration. Some witnesses described seeing what appeared to be artificial devices embedded within the being's anatomy, suggesting a level of biological and technological fusion that exceeded human capabilities by decades or centuries. These observations, if accurate, would indicate civilizations that had achieved seamless integration between organic evolution and artificial enhancement. The transportation of the alleged bodies followed patterns similar to the debris recovery, with materials immediately secured and shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base under extraordinary security measures. Witnesses described seeing small containers being loaded onto military aircraft with handling procedures typically reserved for the most sensitive classified materials. The secrecy surrounding these shipments exceeded anything most personnel had experienced during routine military operations. At Wright-Patterson, according to various accounts, the entities underwent extensive analysis by teams of specialists cleared for the most classified biological research programs. Some former personnel claimed knowledge of ongoing studies that attempted to understand the being's anatomy, technology integration, and possible origins. These alleged research programs supposedly continued for years, if not decades, under security classifications that exceeded most military projects. But the biological claims face significant logical challenges that complicate evaluation of their credibility. Would the military really contact civilian morticians for assistance with such extraordinary materials? Why would standard autopsy procedures require specialized preservation techniques beyond existing military medical capabilities? And most critically, why would evidence of extraterrestrial visitation remain classified for more than 70 years if confirmation could revolutionize human understanding of the universe? The timing of these biological accounts also raises questions about their reliability. Most testimonies emerged 30 to 40 years after the alleged events, during periods when popular culture was actively exploring themes of alien visitation and government cover-ups. Could cultural influences have affected witness memories, encouraging embellishment of relatively mundane experiences into extraordinary encounters with non-human entities. Medical professionals who have examined the alleged biological evidence raise additional concerns about the consistency and plausibility of various witness accounts. The physical descriptions of the entities, while remarkably consistent across different testimonies, closely match science fiction depictions that were becoming popular during the 1950s and 60s. This similarity could indicate either accurate observation of actual extraterrestrial beings or unconscious influence from cultural imagery that shaped witness recollections. Over time, the biological aspects of the Roswell case remain the most contentious element of an already controversial incident. Whether the alleged entities represent evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, misidentified human remains from classified military experiments, or embellished memories influenced by decades of cultural speculation, their impact on the Roswell narrative cannot be understated. These accounts transformed a story about crashed debris into claims about contact with non-human intelligence, elevating the stakes from technological mystery to questions about humanity's place in a populated universe. The truth about what, if anything, was recovered from the New Mexico desert in 1947 remains locked in classified files and fading memories. The immediate aftermath of the Roswell incident reveals a pattern of information control that extends far beyond routine military security protocols. Within hours of the initial debris recovery, a systematic campaign begins to manage witness testimonies, control physical evidence, and ensure that extraordinary claims about flying disc recovery fade quickly from public consciousness. The efficiency and thoroughness of this response suggests either standard operating procedure for protecting classified military projects or recognition that something genuinely unprecedented requires unprecedented secrecy measures. Mac Brazel, the rancher whose discovery initiated the entire controversy, undergoes the most dramatic transformation following his interaction with military officials. Neighbors and acquaintances notice immediate changes in his behavior and demeanor after spending several days at the Roswell Army Airfield for what authorities describe as extended debriefing sessions. The practical, straightforward rancher, who openly discussed strange debris scattered across his land, becomes reluctant to mention the incident, deflecting questions with vague references to military equipment and weather balloons. According to some accounts, Brazel's stay at the military base extends well beyond routine questioning about debris location and recovery. Witnesses claim he appears uncomfortable and evasive when he returns to civilian life, as if something during those conversations fundamentally changed his relationship to the incident he discovered. Some neighbors report that Brazel occasionally hints at having been instructed about the importance of national security and the potential consequences of spreading rumors. During the tense early years of the Cold War, the rancher's apparent compensation for his cooperation adds another layer of complexity to the official narrative. Shortly after the incident, Brazel acquires a new pickup truck, despite previously struggling financially during the post-war economic adjustment. Some observers note improvements to his ranch property and equipment that seem inconsistent with his typical economic circumstances. Whether these acquisitions represent legitimate compensation for his cooperation with a classified military investigation, or payments for his silence about something more extraordinary, remains a subject of speculation. Military personnel involved in the initial recovery phase similar pressure to conform their accounts to official explanations. Several witnesses later describe being called into meetings with superior officers who emphasize the classified nature of weather balloon research and the importance of not discussing military operations with unauthorized personnel. These sessions, according to some accounts, involve explicit warnings about the consequences of violating security protocols, including potential court-martial proceedings for military personnel and federal prosecution for civilians under wartime secrecy laws. Major Jesse Marcel, despite his later contradictory statements, initially supports the weather balloon explanation in official communications and press interactions. His participation in General Ramey's Fort Worth press conference demonstrates apparent acceptance of the corrected narrative, though careful observers note his uncomfortable body language when posed with debris that differs substantially from his initial descriptions. Marcel's cooperation with the official story continues for decades, only breaking down during the late 1970s when retired from active duty and presumably free from military retaliation. The broader Roswell community experiences its own subtle pressures to accept the official explanation and move beyond the brief period of international attention. Local businesses that initially capitalized on the flying disc excitement face visits from military personnel, who emphasize the importance of not spreading unsubstantiated rumors that might encourage unwanted tourism or media attention. Some shop owners report being advised that continued promotion of flying saucer stories could affect their relationships with the nearby military base, a significant economic consideration for a small desert town. Newspaper editors and radio station managers receive guidance about responsible reporting of military activities, with particular emphasis on the dangers of promoting speculation that might compromise ongoing classified research programs. The local media quickly adopts the weather balloon explanation and discourages further investigation into the incident, contributing to its rapid disappearance from public consciousness. Within weeks, Roswell returns to its accustomed quiet, and the flying disc story becomes a footnote in regional newspapers. The systematic collection and classification of all physical evidence follows standard military protocol for potentially sensitive materials, but the thoroughness of the operation suggests recognition of unusual significance. Every fragment recovered from the debris field, regardless of size, travels under guard to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for analysis. Even tiny pieces that might normally be overlooked in routine crash recovery receive careful collection and documentation, indicating either exceptional attention to detail or awareness that these materials warrant extraordinary security measures. Witness interviews conducted by military personnel follow patterns that some participants later describe as intimidating rather than routine information gathering. Questions focus not only on what witnesses observed, but on who they might have discussed the incident with, creating detailed maps of information dissemination that allow authorities to identify and contact everyone who might have knowledge of the events. These secondary contacts then receive their own visits, expanding the circle of people instructed about the importance of not discussing classified military activities. The long-term effects of this information management campaign extend well beyond the immediate participants. Families of military personnel involved in the incident report decades of reluctance to discuss anything related to the events of July 1947. Some children and spouses describe household atmospheres where certain topics remained permanently off-limits, creating generational patterns of silence that persist long after the original security concerns might have expired. Professional relationships within the Roswell community also reflect the pressure to conform to official narratives. Local doctors, morticians, and other service providers who might have had peripheral involvement in supporting military activities during the incident report subtle but persistent discouragement from discussing their observations or participation. The message, delivered through various channels, emphasizes patriotic duty, national security, and the importance of protecting classified research that might provide advantages over potential enemies. This comprehensive approach to information control succeeds in removing the Roswell incident from public attention for more than 30 years, demonstrating either the effectiveness of standard military security procedures or the extraordinary measures required to conceal something genuinely unprecedented. The silence holds until the late 1970s, when changing social attitudes toward government secrecy and the retirement of key participants begins to crack the wall of official explanations. But by then, the truth has become intertwined with decades of secrecy, making definitive answers increasingly difficult to extract from the accumulated layers of official denials and witness intimidation. The convoy from Roswell arrives at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, carrying materials that will disappear into one of America's most classified research complexes. Wright Field, as it was known in 1947, serves as the nation's premier facility for analyzing captured enemy technology, reverse engineering foreign aircraft, and developing countermeasures against potential threats. If something genuinely extraordinary crashed in the New Mexico desert, this sprawling Ohio installation represents the logical destination for materials requiring the highest levels of scientific analysis and security classification. Wright-Patterson's role in foreign technology assessment dates to World War II, when German aircraft, rocket components, and advanced weapons systems arrived for systematic study by American scientists and engineers. The facility houses specialists capable of analyzing metallurgy beyond current American capabilities, propulsion systems that exceed known technological parameters, and electronic equipment that might represent significant intelligence advantages. By 1947, Wright-Patterson has become synonymous with the most sensitive technological secrets in the American military arsenal. The Roswell debris, according to various accounts, receives immediate attention from teams specializing in materials that defy conventional analysis. Some former personnel claim knowledge of special storage facilities designed to house objects requiring extraordinary security measures, areas within the base that operate under classifications exceeding normal military protocols. These facilities, allegedly known by various code names, including the famous Hangar 18, supposedly contain materials that cannot be publicly acknowledged due to their potential implications for national security or human understanding of technological possibilities. Stories about Hangar 18 and similar facilities at Wright-Patterson become central to conspiracy theories surrounding government concealment of extraterrestrial technology. According to these accounts, the hangar houses not only debris from Roswell, but materials recovered from other incidents involving unidentified flying objects. Some former personnel describe seeing craft components that demonstrate manufacturing techniques decades ahead of known human capabilities, propulsion systems that operate on principles beyond current scientific understanding, and materials that exhibit properties impossible to reproduce with terrestrial technology. The alleged biological specimens from Roswell, if they existed, would logically require analysis by the most advanced medical research facilities available to the military. Wright-Patterson houses extensive laboratories capable of conducting pathological studies under the highest security classifications. With personnel cleared for research involving chemical and biological weapons, experimental medical procedures, and other sensitive biological materials. The facility's capacity for maintaining specimens under controlled conditions while conducting extended analysis makes it the obvious destination for any recovered. But the persistent secrecy surrounding activities at Wright-Patterson also provides convenient cover for more mundane explanations of the Roswell materials. The base's legitimate role in analyzing captured German technology, experimental American aircraft, and classified research programs means that unusual materials regularly arrive for study without generating public attention. The Roswell debris could represent misidentified components from any number of classified projects that required analysis by specialists familiar with advanced materials and pharmacist manufacturing techniques. Former personnel who claim knowledge of extraterrestrial materials at Wright-Patterson face the challenge of describing experiences that cannot be independently verified due to ongoing security classifications. Their accounts, while compelling in their consistency and detail, emerge decades after the alleged events during periods when UFO theories have become part of popular culture. The influence of science fiction imagery, conspiracy theories, and suggestion could affect memory and interpretation of experiences that might have more conventional explanations. The broader context of Cold War research adds complexity to evaluating claims about extraordinary materials housed at Wright-Patterson. During the late 1940s, American scientists were working with captured German rocket technology, experimental jet engines, radar systems, and other innovations that would seem impossibly advanced to most observers. Personnel involved in these classified programs might encounter materials and technologies that exceeded their understanding without necessarily involving extraterrestrial sources. Some researchers suggest that alleged alien technology at Wright-Patterson actually represents misidentified advanced human research programs. The military's development of stealth technology, composite materials, and electronic systems during the decades following World War II produced innovations that might seem impossible to observers unfamiliar with classified research capabilities. What appear to be extraterrestrial materials could actually be terrestrial technology so advanced that it challenges conventional understanding of human technological development. The psychological aspects of working with highly classified materials also complicate evaluation of witness testimonies from Wright-Patterson personnel. Extended exposure to extraordinary secrecy, advanced technologies, and restricted information can create environments where ordinary experiences take on mysterious characteristics. Personnel cleared for the most sensitive programs often work in isolation from normal military activities, potentially encouraging speculation about the true nature of their assignments and the materials they encounter. Official responses from Wright-Patterson regarding alleged extraterrestrial materials follow predictable patterns of neither confirmation nor denial. The base acknowledges its role in analyzing foreign technology and conducting classified research, but maintains that specific projects cannot be discussed due to ongoing. This approach allows legitimate research programs to continue without public scrutiny, while avoiding direct confrontation with extraordinary claims that might generate unwanted murmurs. Attention. The longevity of stories about alien technology at Wright-Patterson suggests either persistent truth or remarkably durable mythology. For more than 70 years, accounts have circulated about materials housed at the facility that exceed conventional technological understanding. These stories survive changes in personnel, modifications to base organization, and evolving public attitudes toward government secrecy, indicating either ongoing concealment of extraordinary materials or the power of compelling narratives to persist across generations. Recent government acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena and release of military videos showing objects with apparent advanced capabilities has renewed interest in claims about reverse-engineered alien technology. Some researchers suggest that decades of technological development at Wright-Patterson and similar facilities might finally be approaching public revelation, while others maintain that current UAP encounters represent entirely separate phenomena from the alleged 1947 Roswell materials. The truth about what materials from Roswell, if any, remain stored in the classified facilities of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base continues to elude definitive determination, protected by security classifications that show no signs of expiring. The Roswell incident remained buried in forgotten newspaper archives and fading memories for more than 30 years. A footnote in military history that might have stayed permanently obscured, if not for a chance encounter between a nuclear physicist and a retired Air Force intelligence officer. In 1978, Stanton Friedman, a scientist who had developed an interest in UFO phenomena, met Major Jesse Marcel at a television station in Louisiana. What Marcel told Friedman that day would transform a forgotten news item into the most famous UFO case in American history. Marcel, now safely retired from military service and presumably free from the security constraints that had governed his career, began sharing details about the Roswell incident that contradicted every official explanation. He described materials that exceeded his understanding of metallurgy and manufacturing techniques, debris that demonstrated properties impossible to reproduce with 1947 technology, and a level of military secrecy that suggested something far more significant than weather balloon recovery. For the first time in 3 decades, someone with direct involvement in the original incident was willing to discuss what really happened in the New Mexico desert. Friedman recognized the extraordinary implications of Marcel's account and began investigating other potential witnesses from the Roswell incident. His research uncovered a network of former military personnel, local civilians, and government employees who had remained silent about their experiences for 30 years, but were now willing to share their memories. The stories that emerged painted a picture of events that bore little resemblance to the official weather balloon explanation, suggesting instead the recovery of technology and possibly biological materials that challenged fundamental assumptions about human technological capabilities. The publication of The Roswell Incident in 1980 by Charles Berlitz and William Moore brought Marcel's testimony and other witness accounts to public attention for the first time since 1947. The book presented evidence that the military had recovered not weather balloon debris, but the wreckage of an extraterrestrial spacecraft, complete with the bodies of its non-human occupants. These explosive claims captured public imagination at a time when trust in government institutions remained low, following Vietnam and Watergate, creating a receptive audience for stories about official deception and hidden truths. Television documentaries followed, featuring interviews with Marcel and other witnesses who described experiences that contradicted official explanations. These programs introduced viewers to testimony about materials that wouldn't burn, metal that remembered its original shape, and symbols that resembled no earthly writing system. The visual medium proved particularly effective at conveying the apparent sincerity of witnesses who risked ridicule by sharing extraordinary claims about their involvement in one of the most controversial incidents in modern history. The cultural timing of Roswell's emergence as a UFO story proved crucial to its acceptance and proliferation. The late 1970s and early 1980s witnessed growing public fascination with paranormal phenomena, government conspiracies, and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. prepared audiences to consider friendly contact with alien civilizations, while The X-Files would later popularize themes of government cover-ups and hidden extraterrestrial encounters. Roswell provided a real-world foundation for fictional narratives that resonated with public anxieties about official secrecy and technological mysteries. The incident's transformation from forgotten news to cultural phenomenon also coincided with the Freedom of Information Act's expansion, which allowed researchers to request previously classified government documents related to UFO investigations. While most released materials contained heavy redactions and revealed little about specific incidents, the process of declassification created an atmosphere where government secrecy about unexplained phenomena seemed increasingly unjustifiable. Citizens began demanding answers about incidents that had been dismissed or denied for decades. Roswell's emergence during this period of governmental distrust proved particularly compelling because it offered a concrete example of alleged deception that people could. Unlike more recent UFO sightings that lacked physical evidence or credible witnesses, Roswell involved named individuals, specific locations, and claims about recoverable materials that had allegedly been studied by government scientists. The incident provided the kind of detailed, verifiable framework that conspiracy theorists had long sought as proof of official cover-ups. The media attention surrounding Roswell's revival created a feedback loop that encouraged additional witnesses to come forward with their own accounts of the incident. People who had remained silent for decades began sharing memories of unusual military activity, strange debris, and apparent government secrecy surrounding events in July 1947. Each new testimony added layers to the growing mythology, while raising fresh questions about the reliability of memories that had remained dormant for 30 years. Tourism began transforming Roswell from a quiet desert town into a destination for UFO enthusiasts, conspiracy theorists, and curious travelers. Local businesses embraced the extraterrestrial connection, creating museums, festivals, and attractions that celebrated the town's alleged role in humanity's first contact with alien visitors. The economic benefits of UFO tourism provided powerful incentives for the community to promote and maintain interest in the incident, regardless of its ultimate truth or fiction. Academic researchers and skeptical investigators also turned their attention to the revived Roswell claims, attempting to separate verifiable facts from decades of accumulated mythology. Their efforts revealed inconsistencies in witness testimonies, problems with the timeline of events, and alternative explanations for the materials and activities that had seemed so mysterious to earlier observers. But rather than settling the controversy, scholarly analysis seemed to deepen the divisions between believers and skeptics. The incident's revival during the 1980s established Roswell as the template for UFO conspiracy theories and government cover-up narratives that would influence decades of speculation about official secrecy regarding extraterrestrial phenomena. Whether the claims represented suppressed truth finally emerging or carefully constructed mythology built on fragmentary evidence, Roswell had achieved something unprecedented. Transformation from historical footnote to cultural icon that would define public understanding of humanity's possible relationship with visitors from other worlds. The questions raised by Roswell's public emergence continue to resonate, demanding answers that remain as elusive as the desert winds that still blow across the debris field, where Mac Brazel made his fateful discovery more than 70 years ago. By the early 1990s, the Roswell incident had evolved from a forgotten military footnote into America's most famous UFO case, generating books, documentaries, and a thriving tourism industry built around claims of extraterrestrial visitation and government cover-up. The growing public fascination with the case, combined with congressional pressure for government transparency, eventually compelled the military to provide a comprehensive official response that would either validate the conspiracy theories or offer a definitive alternative explanation. For the events of July 1947, the Air Force's 1994 report, the Roswell Report, Fact versus Fiction in the New Mexico Desert, represents the most detailed official accounting of the incident ever released. The document reveals the existence of Project Mogul, a highly classified Cold War program designed to detect Soviet nuclear weapons testing by monitoring acoustic signatures in the upper atmosphere. According to the report, what crashed near Roswell wasn't a weather balloon or extraterrestrial spacecraft, but components from a sophisticated surveillance system so secret that its very existence couldn't be acknowledged for nearly 50 years. Project Mogul employed arrays of specialized balloons carrying sensitive acoustic equipment to altitudes where nuclear explosions create distinctive sound patterns that travel for thousands of miles through atmospheric layers. The technology represented cutting-edge acoustic research, combined with advanced materials designed to withstand extreme atmospheric conditions while maintaining operational capability for extended periods. The balloons themselves used lightweight yet durable materials that might appear extraordinary to observers unfamiliar with classified military technology. The radar reflectors attached to Mogul arrays employed metallized materials designed to enhance visibility to ground-based tracking systems, while the balloons carried their sensitive cargo through the upper atmosphere. These components, according to the Air Force report, could reasonably account for the unusual debris characteristics described by witnesses at the Roswell crash site. The foil-like materials that demonstrated unusual resilience, the lightweight yet strong support structures, and even the symbols that some witnesses described could represent components of a surveillance system that exceeded public understanding of 1947 technology. The report includes testimony from former Mogul personnel who confirm launches in the Roswell area during the relevant time frame, providing documentary evidence that classified balloon arrays were operating in the region when Mac Brazel discovered debris scattered across his ranch. The timing aligns perfectly with known Mogul activities, and the crash site location falls within the expected trajectory for balloon arrays launched from Alamogordo Army Airfield, approximately 100 miles southwest of the debris field. The extraordinary secrecy surrounding Mogul operations provides logical explanation for the rapid military response and intensive security measures that followed the debris recovery. The project's classification level exceeded most military programs because revealing its existence could compromise America's ability to monitor Soviet nuclear testing capabilities during the early years of the Cold War. Even today, some technical aspects of the Mogul program remain classified, indicating the sensitivity of acoustic surveillance technology that was developed during the 1940s. Colonel Blanchard's decision to announce recovery of a flying disc suddenly makes sense within the context of classified project security. Faced with public curiosity about military debris scattered across civilian land, the base commander chose to issue a brief statement that would satisfy immediate questions without revealing sensitive technical details about ongoing surveillance operations. The rapid correction by General Ramey then provided cover for Mogul by offering a more mundane explanation that would discourage further investigation. Major Marcel's initial confusion about the debris characteristics also becomes understandable when viewed through the lens of need-to-know security protocols. Despite his high security clearance and role as base intelligence officer, Marcel wouldn't necessarily have detailed knowledge of every classified project operating in the region. His puzzlement over materials that exceeded his familiarity with conventional military equipment reflects the compartmentalized nature of Cold War security, rather than encounters with extraterrestrial technology. The Air Force report addresses many of the inconsistencies that have fueled conspiracy theories for decades, but it also raises new questions about the timing and necessity of maintaining such extraordinary secrecy for nearly 5 decades. Critics note that acoustic surveillance technology, while sophisticated for the 1940s, hardly seems to warrant classification that exceeds the Manhattan Project's atomic weapons research. Why would balloon-based monitoring systems require security measures that prevented acknowledgement of their existence until the 1990s? Some researchers suggest that the mogul explanation, while technically plausible, represents another layer of cover story designed to provide rational explanation for an incident that actually involves something far more extraordinary. The timing of the report's release, coinciding with peak public interest in the Roswell case, seems suspiciously convenient to conspiracy theorists who argue that governments have had 50 years to develop plausible alternative explanations for whatever actually crashed in the New Mexico desert. The technical specifications provided in the mogul documentation also fail to satisfy some critics who question whether the described materials and equipment could account for all the witness testimonies about debris properties, the accounts of memory metal that returned to its original shape, materials that couldn't be cut or burned, and hieroglyphic-like symbols don't seem fully explained by even sophisticated balloon surveillance equipment. Either witness accounts were significantly embellished over time, or the mogul explanation doesn't address all aspects of what was recovered near Roswell. The declassification of Project Mogul provides a rational framework for understanding the Roswell incident that satisfies many skeptics while failing to convince true believers that the mystery has been solved. For those who accept the official explanation, Mogul demonstrates how classified military projects can create genuine mysteries that persist for decades when national security prevents acknowledgement of their existence. The case becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of government secrecy and the conspiracy theories that flourish in the absence of official transparency. But for those who remain convinced that something more extraordinary occurred in the New Mexico desert, Project Mogul represents simply the latest in a series of cover stories designed to conceal the truth about humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial visitors. The debate continues, with both sides citing the same evidence to support fundamentally different conclusions about what really crashed near Roswell in July 1947. After more than 70 years of investigation, debate, and official explanations, the truth about what crashed in the New Mexico desert remains as elusive as the desert mirages that shimmer across the landscape where Mac Brazel made his fateful discovery. The Roswell incident has generated thousands of pages of testimony, official reports, and analysis, yet definitive answers continue to slip away like sand through grasping fingers. Perhaps the most honest assessment acknowledges that certainty may be impossible when dealing with events shrouded in military secrecy, filtered through decades of memory, and complicated by the natural human tendency to mythologize extraordinary experiences. The evidence for extraterrestrial explanation carries undeniable weight among those who choose to believe. Multiple witnesses, many with military backgrounds and security clearances, describe materials that exceeded 1947 technological capabilities by decades. Memory metal that returned to original shape regardless of deformation. Lightweight beams that demonstrated impossible strength-to-weight ratios. Foil-like substances that wouldn't burn, tear, or permanently crease, despite extensive testing. These properties, if accurately reported, suggest manufacturing techniques that exceeded anything in human technological development during the middle of the 20th century. The witness testimonies display remarkable consistency across individuals who had no apparent opportunity to coordinate their accounts. Military personnel, civilian observers, and government employees independently describe similar materials, similar symbols etched into debris fragments. and similar levels of official secrecy that seemed excessive for routine weather balloon recovery. The convergence of these separate accounts suggests either accurate observation of genuinely extraordinary phenomena or the influence of shared cultural narratives that shaped individual memories over time. Most compelling to believers is the pattern of government behavior surrounding the incident. The rapid military response, intensive security measures, immediate shipment of debris to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and systematic silencing of witnesses all suggest recognition that something unprecedented had occurred. Weather balloon recovery, even classified surveillance equipment, wouldn't typically warrant such extraordinary measures or generate decades of official denial and deflection. The government's response seems proportional to an event of historic significance rather than routine military equipment malfunction. But the skeptical case carries equal intellectual weight for those who demand higher standards of evidence before accepting revolutionary claims about extraterrestrial visitation. Project Mogul provides reasonable explanation for most witness observations about debris characteristics and government secrecy. Advanced surveillance technology, particularly acoustic monitoring systems designed to detect Soviet nuclear testing, would legitimately require extraordinary classification measures during the early years of the Cold War. The materials and security responses that seem so mysterious in civilian context become understandable when viewed through the lens of legitimate national security operations. The timing of witness testimonies raises legitimate questions about reliability and cultural influence. Most extraordinary claims about alien bodies, impossible materials, and government cover-ups emerged 30 to 40 years after the original incident, during periods when UFO mythology had become deeply embedded in popular culture. The human mind's tendency to fill gaps in memory with culturally available narratives could explain how relatively mundane encounters with classified military equipment evolved into accounts of extraterrestrial contact over decades of retelling and embellishment. The documentary evidence, while extensive, fails to provide the smoking gun that would definitively resolve the controversy. Official military records from 1947 support both weather balloon and classified surveillance explanations for the debris recovery. Photographs from the period show conventional balloon materials, though critics argue these images represent substitute debris displayed to mislead reporters. No physical evidence remains available for independent analysis, having disappeared into classified research channels, where it allegedly remains stored under the highest security classifications. The broader scientific context also complicates evaluation of extraterrestrial claims. If alien civilizations possess the technology to travel between star systems, their materials and manufacturing capabilities would presumably exceed human understanding by centuries or millennia. Yet, the debris descriptions from Roswell, while impressive for 1947, don't seem to demonstrate the kind of revolutionary advancement that true extraterrestrial technology might be expected to display. Memory metal and lightweight composites, while remarkable for their time, have since been developed through conventional human research programs. The persistent government secrecy surrounding the incident provides ammunition for both believers and skeptics. Those who accept extraterrestrial explanations point to decades of official denial as evidence of ongoing cover-up designed to prevent public panic and maintain technological advantages derived from reverse-engineered alien materials. Skeptics argue that legitimate military security concerns about classified surveillance programs adequately explain the sustained secrecy without requiring extraordinary explanations involving extraterrestrial visitation. Recent government acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena adds new complexity to evaluating historical cases like Roswell. Military release of videos showing objects with apparent advanced flight capabilities suggests that unexplained encounters with sophisticated technology continue to occur. Whether these modern incidents vindicate historical claims about extraterrestrial contact or represent entirely separate phenomena involving advanced human technology remains an open question that further complicates attempts to understand what happened in 1947. The human element in the Roswell case may ultimately prove more significant than the technological questions. The incident reveals important truths about government secrecy, public trust, and the way extraordinary claims persist in democratic societies where official explanations don't fully satisfy public curiosity. Whether the debris came from weather balloons, classified surveillance equipment, or extraterrestrial spacecraft, the case demonstrates how secrecy creates the conditions for conspiracy theories that can outlive the original security concerns that justified classification. Perhaps the most honest conclusion acknowledges that definitive answers may remain permanently beyond reach. Too much time has passed, too many witnesses have died, too much evidence has been classified or destroyed, and too much mythology has accumulated around the core events. The truth about what crashed near Roswell may be less important than what the case reveals about human nature, government secrecy, and our endless fascination with the possibility that we might not be alone in a vast and mysterious universe. The desert keeps its secrets, but the questions raised by Mac Brazel's discovery continue to challenge our understanding of truth, evidence, and belief. The transformation of Roswell from a forgotten military incident into America's most famous UFO case represents more than just the evolution of a conspiracy theory. The incident fundamentally altered how the public thinks about government secrecy, extraterrestrial life, and the possibility that world-changing secrets might be hidden in plain sight. By the 1990s, Roswell had become shorthand for official cover-ups and hidden truths, transcending UFO circles to influence broader cultural conversations about transparency, trust, and the relationship between citizens and their government. The economic impact on Roswell itself demonstrates the power of mystery tourism and the commercial appeal of unsolved controversies. What began as embarrassing international attention for a quiet desert town evolved into the foundation of a thriving tourist industry built around alien-themed attractions, museums, and annual festivals. The International UFO Museum and Research Center draws hundreds of thousands of visitors each year, transforming Roswell's economy and identity around its alleged role in humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial visitors. Local businesses embrace the alien connection with enthusiasm that ranges from sincere belief to calculated commercial exploitation. Restaurants serve alien-themed menu items, hotels advertise extraterrestrial amenities, and gift shops overflow with merchandise, celebrating the town's unique place in UFO mythology. The community has successfully transformed an incident that initially brought unwanted scrutiny into a sustainable economic engine that shows no signs of declining, despite decades of official denials and skeptical analysis. But the commercialization of Roswell also raises questions about how economic interests might influence ongoing promotion of extraordinary claims. The town's investment in alien tourism creates powerful incentives to maintain public belief in the extraterrestrial explanation, regardless of evidence supporting more mundane alternatives. Acknowledging that the incident involved weather balloons or classified military equipment would undermine the foundation of an industry that employs hundreds of people and attracts millions of tourist dollars to the local economy. The incident's influence on popular culture extends far beyond New Mexico tourism, establishing templates for government conspiracy narratives that appear throughout modern entertainment media. Television shows like The X-Files drew explicitly from Roswell, themes of hidden alien contact, government cover-ups, and secret facilities housing extraterrestrial technology. Movies ranging from Independence Day to Men in Black incorporate elements that trace directly to claims about the Roswell incident and its alleged. These fictional portrayals, in turn, influence public perception of the historical events by providing visual imagery and narrative frameworks that shape how people interpret witness testimonies and official explanations. The feedback loop between Roswell mythology and popular culture creates a situation where entertainment fiction begins influencing beliefs about historical fact, making it increasingly difficult to separate actual witness accounts from cultural expectations about what alien contact should look like. The incident's role in broader conspiracy culture demonstrates how single events can become symbols for much larger patterns of alleged government deception. Roswell believers often connect the case to claims about secret military bases, reverse-engineered alien technology, ongoing extraterrestrial contact, and systematic suppression of world-changing discoveries. Whether these connections reflect accurate pattern recognition or the human tendency to create coherent narratives from disparate events, Roswell has become the cornerstone of a worldview that sees official secrecy as evidence of extraordinary hidden realities. Academic analysis of the Roswell phenomenon reveals important insights about how societies process extraordinary claims and the role of mystery in modern culture. Sociologists note that belief in government cover-ups often correlates with broader distrust of institutions and authority figures, suggesting that Roswell functions as much as a symbol of political alienation as a specific claim about extraterrestrial contact. The incident provides believers with concrete focus for abstract anxieties about powerlessness and deception in complex modern societies. Psychological research on conspiracy thinking helps explain why Roswell continues to attract believers, despite decades of debunking efforts and official explanations. The human mind's pattern recognition systems, evolved to detect real threats and opportunities, can create false positives that interpret ambiguous evidence as confirmation of pre-existing beliefs. Once individuals become convinced that governments conceal evidence of alien contact, subsequent official denials tend to reinforce rather than challenge those convictions. The incident's international influence demonstrates the global appeal of stories about hidden contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. Roswell has become a cultural export that appears in foreign media, inspires international UFO investigations, and provides a model for similar claims about government cover-ups in other countries. The case suggests universal human fascination with the possibility of cosmic significance and contact with intelligences beyond Earth. Recent government acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena creates new context for evaluating Roswell's legacy and ongoing influence. Military officials now admit that personnel regularly encounter objects with flight characteristics that exceed known technological capabilities, lending credibility to claims that unexplained aerial phenomena represent a genuine mystery worthy of serious investigation. Whether this new openness vindicates historical Roswell believers or suggests that current encounters are more interesting than decades old, debris remains hotly debated. The incident also influenced how subsequent UFO cases are investigated, documented, and presented to the public. Researchers now emphasize the importance of immediate witness interviews, careful preservation of physical evidence, and transparent communication with media and civilians to prevent the kind of confusion and speculation that surrounded the original Roswell events. The case serves as both inspiration for continued investigation and cautionary tale about how secrecy breeds conspiracy theories that can outlive any underlying facts. Perhaps most significantly, Roswell has become a touchstone for questions about how democratic societies should handle potentially world-changing discoveries. If governments did recover evidence of extraterrestrial technology, what would be the appropriate response? How should authorities balance national security concerns against public right to know? The incident forces consideration of scenarios that challenge fundamental assumptions about transparency, security, and humanity's place in the universe. The questions raised by Roswell extend far beyond the specific events of July 1947, touching on deeper issues about truth, evidence, belief, and the relationship between individual citizens and the institutions that govern them. Whether the debris came from weather balloons, surveillance equipment, or extraterrestrial spacecraft, the case has fundamentally changed how we think about the possibilities hidden in desert silence and government secrets. We return to where our journey began, on that quiet New Mexico morning in July 1947, when Mac Brazel discovered debris scattered across his ranch land. The rancher who found strange materials gleaming in the desert sun had no way of knowing he was about to ignite a mystery that would outlast him by decades, transforming a forgotten corner of the American West into the most famous crash site in UFO history. After traveling through 76 years of witness testimonies, official explanations, and endless speculation, we find ourselves facing the same fundamental question that puzzled Brazel as he examined those unusual fragments. What really crashed in the New Mexico desert? The evidence supporting extraterrestrial explanation retains its power to convince those who choose to believe. Multiple witnesses, many with impressive military credentials and security clearances, described materials that demonstrated properties exceeding human technological capabilities by decades. Memory metal that returned to original shape regardless of deformation. Lightweight components that couldn't be cut, burned, or permanently damaged despite extensive testing. Symbols etched into debris fragments that resembled no earthly writing system. These accounts, if accurate, suggest contact with manufacturing techniques that exceeded terrestrial understanding during the middle of the 20th century. The pattern of government response continues to fuel suspicions among those who see evidence of systematic cover-up. The rapid military mobilization, intensive security measures, immediate classification of all materials, and decades of official denial create a framework that seems disproportionate to weather balloon recovery. Why would routine equipment malfunction generate such extraordinary secrecy? Why would physical evidence disappear into the most classified research facilities in America? Why would witnesses report decades of intimidation and pressure to remain silent about their experiences? For believers, the answers point toward recognition by military and government officials that something unprecedented had occurred, something that challenged fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. The recovery of extraterrestrial technology would justify extraordinary security measures, systematic witness intimidation, and decades of official denial designed to prevent public panic, while allowing secret research programs to reverse engineer alien innovations for military and technological advantage. Yet the skeptical perspective offers equally compelling arguments for those who demand extraordinary evidence before accepting extraordinary claims. Project Mogul provides reasonable explanation for debris characteristics, government secrecy, and witness confusion that doesn't require revolutionary assumptions about extraterrestrial visitation. Advanced surveillance technology designed to monitor Soviet nuclear testing would legitimately warrant the security measures and classification levels that seem so mysterious. When viewed outside their proper historical context, the timing of witness testimonies raises legitimate questions about reliability and cultural influence that cannot be easily dismissed. Most extraordinary claims about alien bodies, impossible materials, and government cover-ups emerged 30 to 40 years after the original incident, during periods when UFO mythology had become deeply embedded in popular culture. The human tendency to fill gaps in memory with culturally available narratives could reasonably explain how encounters with classified military equipment evolved into accounts of extraterrestrial contact through decades of retelling and unconscious embellishment. The middle ground between these positions acknowledges that something genuinely unusual occurred in the New Mexico desert, even if not necessarily extraterrestrial in origin. The incident involved materials and activities that exceeded the understanding of witnesses, generated security responses that seemed disproportionate to routine equipment recovery, and created mysteries that have persisted for more than 7 decades. Whether these anomalies point toward alien contact, advanced human technology, or simply the confusion that surrounds classified military operations during wartime secrecy periods remains open to interpretation. The broader implications of the Roswell case extend far beyond questions about extraterrestrial life to touch fundamental issues about truth, evidence, and belief in democratic societies. The incident demonstrates how government secrecy creates conditions for conspiracy theories that can outlive the original security concerns that justified classification. It reveals the challenges of evaluating extraordinary claims when official sources cannot be fully trusted, and physical evidence remains permanently beyond independent examination. Recent government acknowledgement of unidentified aerial phenomena adds new complexity to historical cases like Roswell, without providing definitive answers about what crashed. In 1947, military officials now admit that personnel regularly encounter objects with flight characteristics that exceed known technological capabilities, lending credibility to claims that unexplained aerial phenomena represent genuine mysteries worthy of serious investigation. Whether these modern encounters vindicate historical beliefs about extraterrestrial contact or represent entirely separate categories of unexplained events remains hotly The human element in the Roswell story may ultimately prove more significant than the technological questions. Mac Brazel, Major Jesse Marcel, Colonel William Blanchard, and the other participants in this desert drama were ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances that exceeded their ability to understand or explain. Their responses, whether heroic or flawed, reveal important truths about how individuals react when confronted with experiences that challenge fundamental assumptions about reality and their place within it. The investigation continues through new generations of researchers who bring fresh perspectives and technologies to bear on 76-year-old questions. Advanced analysis techniques, digital document preservation, and global communication networks allow contemporary investigators to examine evidence and testimonies with unprecedented thoroughness. Yet definitive answers remain as elusive as ever, protected by classification barriers, destroyed by time, and complicated by the accumulated mythology that now surrounds the original events. What do you believe happened in the vast silence of the New Mexico desert during that summer night in 1947? Was it advanced military technology requiring extraordinary secrecy during the dangerous early years of the Cold War? Was it evidence of extraterrestrial visitation that governments still cannot acknowledge without fundamentally disrupting human civilization? Or was it something else entirely? A genuinely anomalous event that defies easy categorization within our current understanding of technological and biological possibilities? The choice remains yours, as it has for everyone who has grappled with the Roswell mystery across more than 7 decades of investigation, speculation, and debate. The desert keeps its secrets, the witnesses fade into history, and the truth remains suspended somewhere between the endless sky and the silent earth where Mac Brazel made his fateful discovery. The question that won't die continues to echo across the high desert, carried on winds that have blown across this landscape since long before humans walked the earth, and will continue long after our species has answered the fundamental question of whether we are alone among the stars. In the end, perhaps the mystery itself matters more than any final resolution, reminding us that vast possibilities remain hidden in the ordinary world, waiting for the right moment and the right observer to transform everything we think we know about our place in an infinite and mysterious universe. So here we are, 76 years later, still asking the same question that Mac Brazel faced that desert morning. What really crashed in the New Mexico wilderness? Was it advanced military technology that couldn't be revealed during the Cold War? Was it something far more extraordinary that governments still can't acknowledge? Or was it simply classified balloon equipment that grew into mythology through decades of secrecy and speculation? The truth remains out there, somewhere between official denials and witness testimonies, between classified files and fading memories. What do you believe happened in that desert? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And if you're curious about other mysteries that governments can't quite explain, you might want to explore the Bob Lazar and the UFO secrets of Area 51 next, another case where official explanations don't quite satisfy the questions. Until then, sleep well and keep wondering.